Am I still recording? Hello again, it's me, Chaz. This is episode 2 of my FIFA members videos. This one, France. I'll be covering the very first World Cups, which all took place before World War II. That's the 1930 World Cup in Uruguay, the 1934 World Cup in Italy, and the 1938 World Cup, where France are the hosts. Let's start off with the very first World Cup in 1930. Jules Rimet, the president at the time and the creator of the FIFA World Cup, he convinced France to send out their team to compete in Uruguay. Unfortunately, one of the coaches, the main coach, Gustin Barrios, and France's main defender, Manuel Anato, was unable to make the trip to Uruguay. With those two important people for France, France was still able to win their very first match, which on record is simultaneously the first match to ever be played at the World Cup. France versus Mexico and the USA versus Belgium were the first two games to ever be played at a World Cup. France went on to win that match 4-1, while the USA won 3-0 against Belgium, making France and the USA the first nations to ever win a game at the World Cup. France also have the privilege of scoring the very first goal at the World Cup, courtesy of Lucien Laurent, on record scoring in the 19th minute for France against Mexico. And that game was played in the Estadio Poquitas in Montevideo. Unfortunately for France, they didn't maintain their good start. They lost to Argentina 1-0 in the next game, the very first time those nations met each other. Most recently, they played each other in the final in 2022. France then went on to lose again to Chile 1-0 in a stadium where the final would have been played in Estadio Centenario. I mean, not the worst showing. Great start, and they conceded 3 goals in total. Lost 1-0 in the last 2 games. Well, not a horrible start. Fortunately, they couldn't get out of their group. They ended up third in the group with 2 points. Back then, a win would only get you 2 points instead of 3. 4 years later, in 1934, the second World Cup was in Italy. This time, not a long journey for the French team. They competed at this World Cup. Now, unlike the 1930 World Cup, the 1934 World Cup was just a knockout competition, no group stages. France returned with another 5 nations: the USA, Argentina, Brazil, Belgium, and Romania to compete at the 1934 World Cup. Another 10 nations made their debut, including the hosts, Italy, who went on to win that competition. The 1934 World Cup is the very first World Cup to have qualifying rounds, unlike the first World Cup, where all those nations qualified automatically for the World Cup. This one had a qualifying stage. And every World Cup since has been like this. This is also the very first World Cup that a host nation, which was Italy, had to qualify. I will talk more about the qualifying process in my 1934 video of the World Cup, which will be similar to my 1930 video of the World Cup. There was a total of 12 groups. France qualified from Group 8. France was in the same group as Germany and Luxembourg. France beat Luxembourg 6-1. John Nicola scored 4 goals in that game. Because France and Germany already qualified, they didn't have to play each other. So they both went through, while Luxembourg didn't. France played Austria in the first round, or the round of 16, where they lost 3-2 after extra time. John Nicola did open the scoring for France in the 18th minute, but eventually Austria managed to equalise, and then at extra time they managed to finish the game 3-2, knocking France out of that World Cup. And that would have been the second time that France didn't pass the first obstacle. Austria went on to finish in 4th at that World Cup. They were knocked out by Italy 1-0 in the semi-finals, and then lost to Germany 3-2 in the 3rd place playoff. So 1938 World Cup, that's the first one that France hosted as the hosts. And since 38, they were able to qualify automatically. Italy also qualified as the champions of the 1934 World Cup. A few things about the 1938 World Cup. This was the last time that a World Cup wouldn't have any group stages. Every World Cup since 38 has had a group stage. In some cases, 2 group stages. This is also the last World Cup to take place before World War II. No, this was the World Cup that only 3 nations outside of Europe, France, with Belgium and Brazil, were the only nations to compete at that time at all 3 World Cups. All competing the very first in 1934 and in this World Cup in 38. France do play Belgium in the first round of 16. France beat Belgium 3-1 in this match. John Nicola scored 2 goals in that one. Vaniti also scored in the very first minute of that game. But that was France's only win. They go up against the champions, the holders at the time, Italy. They end up losing 3-1, knocking them out of the competition. France played both of their matches in the Stade Olympique de Colombe. I think that's right. As I mentioned, that was the very first time a host nation didn't win the competition. Italy went on to winning the World Cup in France in 1938. Okay, those were the pre-World War II World Cups and France's performance in all 3. The next videos will be all the World Cups that took place after World War II, starting with the 1950 World Cup, which took place in Brazil. So I hope you check out those videos. Thank you for watching again, or listening, or both. And I appreciate it. And bye.